In the pulsating heart of Miami, hidden among winding streets and the constant buzz of the city, was the Morning Cafe. It was a magical place, an urban refuge known for its welcoming atmosphere, attracting a clientele as diverse as the colors of the city. Amidst the captivating scent of freshly ground coffee and baked bread worked David, the most dedicated waiter in the place. David, with his carefully combed back hair and impeccable uniform, was the embodiment of cordiality. His smile, as warm as the sun, lit up the small cafe, making customers feel at home. He moved with fluid grace, balancing trays with dexterity, while his eyes gleamed with genuine interest in every person he served. "Wow, David, you're always so attentive. How do you remember that I love my coffee with a hint of cinnamon?" asked Mrs. Beatrice, an elegant lady who frequented the cafe every morning. David smiled, handing her the perfectly prepared coffee. "Oh, Mrs. Beatrice, it's easy to remember when it comes to customers as special as you," he replied with a kindness that made everyone feel valued. The Morning Cafe was a kaleidoscope of stories and personalities, from the young, passionate couple sharing quiet moments in the discreet corner to the group of noisy friends discussing politics and sports. David served everyone with the same composure and joy. He knew their names, their preferences, and often even their aspirations as they crossed the cafe's doors. At a table near the window, a tourist with a travel guide in his hand seemed lost amid the menu. David approached with a welcoming smile. "Can I assist with a recommendation, sir?" he asked. "Oh yes, please. What would you recommend for someone visiting the city?" asked the tourist, impressed by the hospitality. "To start, our daily burger is a must-try, and maybe an ice cream for dessert. A perfect combination to savor the taste of the city," suggested David. With each order fulfilled, David left a bit of his joy, turning Morning Cafe into more than just a simple establishment. It was a piece of the city's heart where diversity and joy converged, and where he, David, was the maestro of this urban symphony. In the tapestry of faces and stories that composed the Morning Cafe, there was one figure that stood out: Jason Morgan, an elderly lady whose presence was as striking as her past. She was a former renowned actress whose once brilliant career on the stages of Miami had waned over time. Now Jason walked with an air of forgotten nobility, draped in elegant shawls, and with a gaze that carried stories of better days. Despite her refined appearance, Jason was known in the cafe for her difficult and grumpy demeanor. She always sat at the same table, looking disdainfully at other customers and frequently scolding the waitstaff for trivial reasons. "This coffee is cold. Can't anyone make a simple espresso in this city?" she exclaimed, her voice still retaining traces of her theatrical training. Her bitter temper and constant complaints drove away the sympathy of the other waiters, who took turns avoiding her. However, David, with a patience that seemed to spring from an inexhaustible source, decided to take on the challenge of understanding and serving Jason. On a typical morning, as Jason flipped through an old newspaper, David approached cautiously. "Good morning, Mrs. Jason. What would you like to have today?" he asked with a gentle smile. "Do you even know how to make a decent cappuccino?" replied Jason without lifting her eyes from the newspaper. "Of course, Mrs. Jason, and I'll prepare it with the utmost care as you deserve," David affirmed, undeterred by her sharpness. While preparing the drink, David reflected on Jason. He saw beyond the facade of bitterness, noticing traces of the woman who had once captivated audiences with her talent. Returning to her table, he handed over the cappuccino with a delicacy that contrasted with Jason's usual treatment. Upon tasting the drink, a faint smile formed on Jason's lips. "It's not as bad as I expected," she admitted reluctantly. "Mrs. Jason, I know you had an incredible career on stage. You must have fascinating stories to tell," David said, trying to establish a connection. Jason stared at him, surprised by the young man's genuine interest. For a moment, her gaze lost its usual hardness, and she allowed herself to briefly reminisce about the days of glory. "Oh, my young man, I shone under the stage lights, but that was a long time ago," she said with a sigh that carried both pride and melancholy. David, sensing the subtle change in Jason, knew he was on the right path to uncover the story behind the bitter facade of that woman. He was determined to show Jason that, despite her career's decline, she was still valued and respected, at least in that small cafe in the heart of Miami. As the days passed, David always struck up a conversation with Jason to hear more about her story. And every day, Jason would tell a story of a theatrical play and how her life was. Over time, Jason and David built a great friendship. On a typical day at Morning Cafe, the sun shone through the windows, bathing the interior in a golden light that brought the cozy environment to life. Regular customers came and went, each immersed in their own worlds, while David, the always attentive waiter, moved between the tables with the efficiency and cordiality that characterized him. However, that morning, one chair remained empty, Jason's chair. As the hours passed, Jason's absence began to be felt. David, accustomed to her daily presence and even the challenging interactions, felt a strange emptiness. He couldn't help but look at the table usually occupied by her, now deserted, with a growing sense of concern. "David, have you noticed that Mrs. Jason didn't come today?" Chelsea, one of the waitresses, commented as she refilled the sugar counter. "Yes, I noticed. It's strange. She never misses a day. I hope everything is okay," replied David, his forehead furrowed with worry. As the day progressed and Jason's absence extended, David couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He recalled their recent conversations, searching for any clue that could explain her sudden absence. Jason, despite her usual rudeness, had started to open up more, sharing fragments of her memories and experiences. At the end of the day, with the cafe already closing, David spoke with the manager, Mr. George. "I'm really worried about Mrs. Jason. She never missed a single day. Do you think we should try to contact her?" David, a middle-aged man with an understanding look, placed his hand on David's shoulder. "David, you have a good heart, but you know how reserved she is. Maybe she just needs some time for herself." But David couldn't come to terms with it. As he walked the streets of Miami after work, his mind was filled with thoughts about Jason. He knew something was amiss and felt an implicit responsibility to find out what had happened to the elderly actress who had somehow become an important part of his days. David's concern was a reflection of his empathetic nature, a clear sign that human relationships at Morning Cafe went far beyond the simple act of serving coffee. Now tell me, if you were David, would you try to find out Jason's whereabouts? And what do you think happened to Jason? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your opinion. The days went by, and David asked one of Jason's stage colleagues about her whereabouts, only to discover that Jason had passed away. She had been battling cancer for years. Upon hearing the news, David was deeply saddened, but he carried on with his life. After several months since Jason Morgan's passing, Morning Cafe continued to be a gathering place for lovers of good coffee and pleasant conversations. David, still touched by Jason's loss, remained dedicated to his work, always with a kind smile and a friendly word for the customers. However, a part of him still missed the challenging interactions with the elderly woman. On a busy afternoon when the cafe was filled with customers engaged in their conversations and laughter, a man in a suit and tie carrying a leather briefcase entered the establishment. He looked around, clearly searching for someone, until his eyes landed on David. "Sorry to bother you. You're David, right?" the man asked, approaching the counter. David, somewhat surprised, nodded. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "My name is Roger Anderson. I'm a lawyer. I'm here regarding a matter involving Jason Morgan," explained the lawyer with a serious expression. David felt his heart race. "Jason, but what?" Roger opened his briefcase, taking out a thick envelope and a set of documents. "Jason left a will, and you're in it. In fact, she left her entire estate to you, David, but it took me some effort to track you down." David was stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. "To me? But why?" "According to the will, Jason was deeply grateful for your kindness and patience. She mentions that your attention and care in her last months were something she would never forget," explained Roger, handing the documents to David. David flipped through the papers, still in a state of shock. He read Jason's words, written in elegant handwriting, expressing her gratitude and recognition for the treatment he had given her. I don't even know what to say. I just treated her with the respect and kindness she deserved," murmured David, moved. "She saw something in you, David, something that maybe not everyone saw. That was enough for her," said Roger with a faint smile. The revelation of Jason's will was a moment of deep reflection for David. After the revelation of the inheritance left by Jason Morgan, David found himself in a state of deep reflection. Morning Cafe continued its usual hustle and bustle, but for David, everything felt different. Sitting quietly at a corner table with Jason's documents carefully laid out in front of him, he pondered the meaning of this unexpected gesture. "Are you all right, David? You seem thoughtful," commented Chelsea, approaching with a cup of coffee for him. David looked up, a melancholic smile on his lips. "I'm just reflecting on Jason, on how small actions can have a big impact." Chelsea nodded, sitting beside him. "She changed a lot in her demeanor lately, and that was because of you. I just showed a bit of empathy and respect. I never imagined that could mean so much to someone like her," David said, picking up the coffee cup. "Sometimes it's all someone needs. A little humanity, in a world that sometimes seems to have forgotten what that means," Chelsea replied, glancing at the customers around. David thought back to the times when Jason had been irritable and how he had chosen to respond with kindness. He never knew the challenges she faced in her personal life, but now he realized that her behavior was a reflection of her inner struggles. "Jason taught me a valuable lesson," David said, more to himself than to Chelsea. "Even in the toughest moments when someone seems unyielding, empathy and respect can reach the heart. They can transform not only that person's life, but ours too." Chelsea smiled, touched by the depth of David's words. "You made a difference, David, and that's something you should carry with pride." As David continued his work at the cafe that afternoon, he did so with newfound understanding. Jason's generosity, more than a material gift, had been a gift of knowledge and growth. He realized that every interaction, every act of kindness, every moment of patience had the power to alter the course of human nature, changing lives in unimaginable ways. The unexpected inheritance from Jason Morgan opened a new chapter in David's life. Sitting in his small home, surrounded by documents attesting to his new financial reality, he contemplated the future with a mix of gratitude and responsibility. The Morning Cafe, which had been his second home for so many years, now shone in his mind with renewed potential. "I can do something great with this," David murmured to himself, his thoughts swirling with possibilities. He had always dreamt of transforming the cafe into a cultural meeting point where arts and conversations could flourish. The next day, David spoke with Mr. George, the cafe's owner. "Mr. George, I have some ideas for the cafe that I'd like to share with you. I believe we can make this place even more special." Mr. George, a middle-aged man with a shrewd look, smiled. "I'm curious, David. What do you have in mind?" David unveiled a set of plans and sketches. "I'd like to invest in the cafe, bringing in new energy and ideas. We can modernize the space while preserving its cozy essence. How about introducing live music nights, local art exhibitions, and even poetry reading sessions? We could become partners." Impressed, Mr. George nodded. "That sounds wonderful, David. It seems like you've really thought it through. I accept the proposal." With Jason's inheritance, David implemented the changes. He renovated the cafe's interior, adding comfortable sofas and shelves filled with books. The walls now displayed works by local artists, and the live music nights quickly became a success. The cafe, which had already been a refuge for many, transformed into a vibrant cultural center reflecting the city's diversity and creativity. "Look at what you've done with the place, David. Jason would have been proud," commented Chelsea, admiring the new additions. David smiled, looking around. "I hope so. All of this was possible because of her. I learned from Jason that kindness and attention can truly transform lives. I want this cafe to be an example of that, a place where everyone feels welcome and valued." As the days passed, Morning Cafe flourished under David's new management. He not only fulfilled his dreams, but also perpetuated Jason's legacy, proving that kindness indeed possesses transformative power. The cafe became more than just a simple establishment. It was a symbol of the transformation that love and dedication can bring, a living testament to the lasting influence of a generous soul. Over time, the story of Jason Morgan and David became woven among the tables and chairs of the renewed Morning Cafe. The cafe blossomed into an urban legend, inspiring all who crossed the threshold of that charming space. The cafe, now a hub of culture and meaningful encounters, reverberated with the lessons of humanity and kindness that the relationship between David and Jason had taught. On a rainy afternoon, while the gentle sound of rain rhythmically tapped against the windows, a group of regular customers gathered around a table, their conversations revolving around the positive changes they had witnessed. "Did you know all of this started with Jason, that lady who used to come here every day?" one of them remarked, a gray-haired man with a pensive look. "Yes, I remember her, always so bitter. But David, with his patience, changed something in her," replied a woman holding a cup of tea with warmed hands. "That's true," said David, approaching with a warm smile and a tray in his hands. "Every person who comes in here has a story. And Jason taught me never to underestimate the power of listening and being kind. It's a powerful lesson." "You've transformed this place, and somehow all of us too," commented a young person seated at the table. David placed the drinks on the table and leaned slightly. "Each one of you contributes to the story of this cafe. Jason showed me that behind every face there's a universe of experiences. Compassion and patience can reveal the most surprising treasures." As the customers continued their conversations, David stepped away, looking around the cafe with a sense of fulfillment. Jason's memory was always present, a constant reminder of the importance of every human interaction. He had learned that even in the most challenging moments, empathy and respect could unveil the beauty and complexity hidden within the human soul. In that space, every customer, every smile, every exchanged word carried a deeper meaning. The story of Jason and David was not just about transforming a cafe, but about transforming lives. It echoed through the walls of Morning Cafe, reminding everyone that amidst the chaos of everyday life, kindness and understanding still had the power to change the world, one heart at a time.